You've tuned into InvisiYouth Chat Sessions, a video podcast series. Our episode starts right now. Here's your host, Dominique Vale.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the InvisiYouth Chat Sessions, where you can check in for your dose of humor-breaking, motivation-filling, empowering life hacks and motivating tips for all of the medically adultish people in your life. I'm Dominique Vale, founder of InvisiYouth Charity, and your host for the InvisiYouth Chat Sessions. And today we are on Season 7, Episode 103, and I can barely contain my excitement, guys. This is a slight fangirl moment. This episode might be slightly selfish that it is all about me, but I know so many of you will also enjoy it too, because we have someone who is a phenomenal journalist and a part of a sport that you guys know I love and my friends know I watch all the time. So you guys know I'm having a double whammy of a moment here. So please help me give a very warm welcome to British TV and radio presenter and BBC Formula One broadcaster, Jennie Gow, everybody. I'm so excited because Jennie has had such a unique way of getting into motorsport, and after studying media and communications, she joined BBC Sports in 1999, doing production secretary work for Sports Personality of the Century, then traffic presenting, and then moving into sports. And it was in 2010 that she then got to work as a new presenter for BBC MotoGP, and then her life in motorsport would really begin, even getting into working with Formula E, which is one of my personal favorites, BBC's F1 as a broadcaster too, and she's been featured on Netflix Drive to Survive, which I know many of you guys also love. So in December of 2022, Jennie also suffered a stroke from a blood vessel due to a clot that came from a atrium in her neck and a tear in a blood vessel due to coughing and a viral infection. It damaged parts of her brain that were associated to speech and has dealt with things like dyslexia and nerve damage during these 2 years of a recovery process. Now, as a stroke survivor, she uses her platform to help raise awareness and sharing her journey for stroke awareness, which is so wonderful. And Jennie has worked very hard for her recovery in life with her husband and young daughter, as well as in her career, returning to F1 as a broadcaster and correspondent in July of 2023, and releasing her new book, How to Read F1, that came out this past fall. And I'm so elated to have Jennie on the show. Jennie, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. It's lovely to be here. And I'm really excited to talk to you and everyone at home who's tuned in, because it's been a journey.
It really has. It really has been such a journey, and I'm so excited to get to talk to you and have our guests get to know more about you from behind the mic, and even though I have you in front of a mic right now. So I'm so excited. We will get to all the fun stories. You'll get an F1 segment. Don't you worry. It's at the end, everybody. And we're going to have all of the fun. So before we go into segment 1, I always like to remind you, make sure you've hit that subscribe button. It's right there. If you're watching on YouTube, you can click that subscribe button, or on listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You have about 55 more minutes. I'll remind you again later. And we are going to go into our next and very first segment, Remember the Last Time.
Remember the last time? Do you remember the last time?
Remember the Last Time is our fun way to get to know our guests by simply just knowing what was the last time they've done something. So I'm going to gain some fun and insightful knowledge from Jennie with a little rapid fire. So Jennie, are you ready for some last questions?
Yes, I am. Although I'm very aware, before we start, Dominique, that you are dressed for summer and I am dressed for winter. So yeah. I would just want to apologise. We'll find the middle ground at some point, but I'm always cold. So
unfortunately, nerve damage makes me very cold as well, and I'm drinking boiling hot coffee while being sleeveless. So it's a great combination.
I think between us, we're probably somewhere in the middle would be right.
We are, yeah. We're in the correct season at some point in the middle.
But I'm ready. I'm ready to do this.
I love it. So when was the last time you watched a sport that wasn't F1 or motorsport related?
So my daughter takes part in loads of sports at the minute. I didn't come from a sporty background, but she does. So I suppose any sport that she's doing, so athletics, she's quite good at, but swimming, I'd say. And it doesn't matter how like amateur the competition, I still get like really into it.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. When was the last time you visited a new place for the first time?
Ooh, this Christmas, we decided to go to the seaside in the UK. It was 2 years since my stroke, so we tried somewhere new and found this really cute little beach, which was all pebbles, and I mean, quaint as, and there's little tea shops and stuff. So we went there and went into the sea, and that was cold.
Oh God, I can imagine. I can only imagine. When was the last time you laughed so hard that you cried?
Probably playing Pictionary with my husband and daughter over Christmas. She's not played it before. So watching her trying to draw something and to share in our love was really funny. But it was painfully funny.
I like that a lot. When was the last time you ate a meal that you would give a 5-star rating?
Ooh, this weekend.
Ooh.
I was at a hotel for work, staying over, and the meal we had in the evening was absolutely amazing. It was in the hotel, so it wasn't like fancy, but it was a bowl of like soup and noodles and tofu, and yeah, it was so yummy. So yeah, then.
Some hotels have phenomenal chefs. You're like,
Yes.
I don't want to leave and just eat here every night instead of going out.
Exactly.
If you were hosting a Last Supper, who would be 3 or 4 people that you would want at your table?
Now, can they be dead?
Any point of their life, I'm happy with.
Perfect. I will choose when they're alive, and say Ayrton Senna, JF Kennedy, because I'm obsessed, and then maybe Brad Pitt.
Oh,
just to bring the level of prettiness up.
There,
I like alive, by the way. It's good.
I was gonna say, and quasi F1 related now.
Yeah,
for
exactly,
him.
exactly. And I mean, I'm going for all the males. That's probably wrong to do, isn't it? I need a female to equal things up.
Yeah.
Let's go for Margaret Thatcher.
that's
Because
a good
love
choice.
to just grill her.
That's a strong choice.
Can you imagine Kennedy versus Thatcher? You just sit there and go.
I know. You would want to be in the middle of the table for sure.
Or just to the side.
Yeah.
Like a side table.
I love that. When was the last time you saw something for the first time at a Grand Prix?
I see things all the time that I've never seen before. But in Abu Dhabi, it was one of the first outside broadcasts I'd done. So I've done quite a lot remote. But this one I was actually let loose in Abu Dhabi. Oh. And the number of females in teams has increased from the last time I was there to now. And it was so refreshing and such a step forward.
Yeah.
I celebrated in myself that we've got this far, that almost every team had at least one mechanic who was female. And that is just a game changer.
Yeah, no, that's really true. I really like hearing that. That's really great. When was the last time you tried something for the first time?
So we went to Malaysia last summer on a nice family holiday, and trying the food out there. I'm mostly vegan. I say that I'm kind of pescatarian but allergic to milk, so it's easier to say vegan. But going out there and trying things that wouldn't kill me because I'm allergic to milk, and had no animal content, I thought would be quite hard. But actually, it was easier than I thought. And I would say that's the last time I tried something new. There's probably loads in between then and now, but that's the one I can think of right now.
I like that. And then last question, when was the last time you were raising some stroke survivor awareness and you felt inspired?
I've been in that situation so many times. I was lucky enough to be asked to open a new ward for the stroke clinic that is at my local hospital that I was actually treated at when I was first unwell. And that was such an honor to be able to speak to a really lovely audience who were there, and there were doctors and nurses who had treated me, but there were plenty of other people involved in raising money and the profile of stroke to the wider audience. And it was just so nice to be in that environment. Emotional, but nice.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's such a good answer, and that's such a good way to end that segment with a uplifting answer. I like that a lot. And before we go into our next segment, I like to remind you guys of something that also uplifts me, and that is our InvisiYouth charity shop, because so many of our volunteers are involved in it. We sell our Subtle Activist color block bracelets. I'm wearing a couple now, and they are on display behind me as well. And they are handmade bracelets by our young adults with chronic illness and disability, sold exclusively on our Etsy page with free global shipping. So 100% of every bracelet sale goes directly towards funding all of our free resources and programs we provide every month for teens and young adults living with chronic illness and disability, so that they can have resources to bring themselves some educational awareness, personal development, and mental well-being to thrive in the non-medical aspects of their life with a chronic illness or disability. So every bracelet is basically like making a donation, and you get a gift in return. We like to say it is that subtle activism, our brand of doing activism. We call it the Starbucks cup in that Game of Thrones scene that wasn't meant to be there but caused a lot of curious conversation. We want you guys to be able to raise awareness in all levels of awareness that you can. And by doing that, you see it on the screen next to me as well. You can go to our Etsy page. It is in our description and show notes, and buy a bracelet for yourself or someone you love, and know that you are giving back to a phenomenal cause as well. So we thank you guys so much if you go check out our Etsy and our InvisiYouth charity shop. And we're going to go now into something else that I love, one of my favorite segments. It's Path to Power.
Path to Power.
Path to Power is a time when we get to discuss the how-tos of owning life, your health, career, and all of your favorite activities. And so with Jennie, we are going to go into how to get that advice of creating your own power within yourself and how to feel empowered in different health struggles like Jennie has built in for herself through her stroke experience and being a stroke survivor. So I know this past December hit that 2-year marker since you had your stroke. And so I know the recovery process of going through that is a long process to go through. And that can kind of feel mentally or even physically draining or challenging at all different points. So for you, what has the process been like from that beginning going into 2 years? And what has worked for you to not just stay positive, but stay motivated through the different challenges of such a long process that I know so many people in illness or even with being stroke survivors go through, that it is a lifelong process to go with?
Yeah, and no one ever tells you that,
do
they? They don't say, oh, this will affect you for the rest of your life. They go, you've got this. And it's like, what am I trying to get? I don't know. So yes, I had my stroke, as you say, just over 2 years ago. And it was out of the blue. I didn't realize it was about to happen. And I had I had flu at the time, and I coughed, and that cough ruptured the artery going up to my brain. So a clot went up to my brain. I collapsed, and luckily my husband found me really quickly. Otherwise, I don't think I'd be sitting here talking to you now. So there's a lot of luck in my journey and the story. Like, we were in the hospital within, I think, 20 minutes of me collapsing.
Wow.
It was so quick. That might be absolutely wrong. I don't remember much, but I feel like that was about the time span.
Yeah.
It was at the height of everyone having flu, but I didn't realize that they already suspected I'd had a stroke. So they just whizzed me past everyone. I was like, well, I should be in a queue somewhere. These were all internal thoughts, by the way. I couldn't speak to anyone. I lost my voice for 6 days. And losing your ability to speak and communicate is, especially as I am someone who communicates all the time, was really, really hard to go through. And at that point, I felt probably the most disadvantaged, the most disabled that I felt all the way along, because you kind of just merge into the background. You can't talk, you can't communicate with people. You have no way of steering your ship. So you're in the hands of everyone else. You lose all your independence, as I'm sure many other people listening to this will understand. And losing that independence, the confidence that you had before, because you're having to relearn everything. I found that really hard to try and even compute. And after stroke, your brain doesn't work as it did before. And you can't quite rely on it. And even now, I can't quite rely on my brain to do what I want it to do. So I think I found my drive with my family at first, and just wanting to get better for them. And that drive I didn't realize how strong that was. I never would have thought I would have been the person who would be up there banging a drum and saying, this has happened. But 2 weeks after the stroke, my husband and I was back at home, luckily. And my husband and I both decided that it would be better to go public. And it would have been, I think, relatively easy to just take a break, not tell anyone, and come back as if nothing had ever happened. But that didn't feel right to me. I felt like I needed to share the experience with people. I needed to know, firstly, I wasn't alone.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I wanted people to know that this happens. And it's horrible, but it could happen to someone you know. It could happen to yourself. It doesn't matter what age you are. So, yeah, I don't know where it came from, but I felt driven to talk about it and try my hardest, if I got my voice back, to use it for some good. So it was a long journey to get my voice back, then to get the words back in the right order. And I'm constantly fighting with my brain just to speak. But I know that if I take my time, that something important will come out eventually.
Yeah. I know, right? And I love how you said that the drive at first really didn't even start with your own personal motivation. It came for doing it for your family, and then seeing that growth within yourself of that process, then that motivation can turn inward for yourself, and then you feel self-motivated. Because I think for so many young people, that becomes the process of I don't feel it for myself, and you feel that lost point, especially even for myself. My chronic illness came from an injury, and I always say my life changed in 3 seconds from the injury, and that was it. And so there wasn't a planned process or a conversation. It was just, this is the new axis that your world is on, and figure it out. And so the relearning, like you even said, when it went into my leg, and I then had to learn how to walk again, and learning skills that you're thinking I learned when I was a baby and a child, and having to kind of, that the weird phrase of humble yourself down to, okay, and this is fine to do it, and let's figure out how to do it, is such a hard process internally, that, like you saying, finding that motivation outward and in other people, and even probably your speech therapists or your physical therapist, and them motivating you and being like, all right, well, they feel motivated, so let me just latch on to what they say, kind of is important. Because so many people feel, well, if I don't feel it, what's the point? But like you said, trying to figure out, well, I'm going to take my drive for them first, and then let's see where that takes me. It is something that can manifest for you and grow for you in a way. So I think for a lot of people, that's a helpful mindset shift to have in a health struggle or in a disability that you weren't expecting when it comes on at a different point in your life, especially.
Yeah, I think that feeling of loss that you mentioned is so important to recognize
Yeah.
and also accept.
Mm.
I'm not sure I've got to that process of accepting what has happened, even now. But I know that moment I did lose something, and I know, or I'm aware that I can't get it back, which is frustrating. And I think anyone going through this process will have to deal with some level of frustration.
Yeah.
And loss and frustration, they're not healthy, they're not good things to feel.
Yeah.
But you have to go through that process, I think.
Yeah.
There's no way to fast forward that. I wish there was.
Yeah. And it's in a way too, it kind of, so many people focus on all of the positive emotions of think positively, and you make a little bit of growth and all of that works and all of that, but you have to kind of marry it with the negative emotions of loss and frustration and annoyance. And because you feel those, because you know what it's like when you've had a good health day or when you've had a set forward. So you kind of have to let the two of them go hand in hand together in a journey, especially with a health crisis or with a chronic illness, because that's going to now be, I always say my chronic illnesses are a passenger in the car with me now. So sometimes they like to kick me out of the driver's seat and go, it's our car now. Other times I can put them in the back seat and go, it's my car now. So it's just letting them be a teammate with me instead of like the enforcer, and allowing myself to be like, not a good day today. And I'm going to feel all of the negative feels I want, because I know tomorrow I can look at this a different way. But for now, I need to kind of allow myself to feel, like you said, frustration, which is a annoying emotion, but a healthy one nonetheless.
Yeah. I think acceptance is, you obviously are in a good place with that. I feel like you've accepted that this has happened and that actually you can grow from that point.
Yeah, it's been for me, because obviously I've had health issues for 16 years now. So it's equal half and half of my life. So I think it's a journey and it's a long one. But even I always will say to people, even at this stage of life, you do still have the thought process of when you have a health setback, or I have to now take breaks from work and other things are happening, or your health evolves as you age, and my chronic illnesses affect different parts of my health now as I've gotten older. So you just are always kind of learning to adapt with it. And I always will say it's like altered independence. I'm independent and I alter it based off of how I need to accept it. Like, okay, I still want to be independent. How do I alter it? And so it's just knowing that it's always going to be there and do little setbacks, but I'm always still here and I can always move around it and adapt to it. And so once I accepted my role in how to play with it, it became less of a, oh, I'm going to accept it to here. And then from that point forward, it's an uphill, happy road from it. It is up and down. And when you know that's kind of the journey of life with it, then it makes it more enjoyable even in the bad days, because you still accept it. You're like, all right, I'm accepting this isn't going to be a day for me, or this isn't going to be it. And then you're accepting of, oh, it's a good day. So you kind of always are doing that dance. And I think when people find that faster, is easier than just waiting for the kind of utopian, okay, and now I'm ready to be in phase 5 of grief acceptance, and now I'm ready. Like, if you always are doing this, you're always doing the cycle. And I think that's probably the best way to like look at it, like you said too, is finding that for yourself too, of which place you're at now and working with it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And even kind of, I wanted to kind of ask from that too, when you went back to work from having your stroke, like you said, you could have just left work for a period of time and then come back when you were ready and able to, without people knowing. But because you then made that choice to share this journey with people, when you came back, it had not just you feeling like, oh, am I ready now to do this? But now all of your colleagues knew what you were coming back through, and the wider F1 audience who watches you and really fell in love with your commentating and were so excited to see you come back, it was a much bigger sort of support circle around that. So how did you kind of navigate your own finding confidence of, yes, I'm ready, but then also tackling, I have so many people now who I'm working with who know, and they might want to intervene and help and feel like they need to? Or how did you kind of navigate those early months of coming back to work?
So I was really lucky. I had a lot of therapy at home with the early discharge centre, and they kind of led the path for me to be released and discharged from hospital, but keep on having like very intense therapy and workshops. So as you say, I had speech and language, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, then a nurse attached to my case. So I felt well supported, and I wanted to return to work as soon as possible. That was one of the driving factors. And I was like, I need to get back to work. From quite a selfish point of view, I suppose. I wanted to prove that I was still okay and that nothing had changed that much, even though everything had changed.
Yeah.
So I was pushing, but I was very much aware that I didn't want to return too soon, because then people would not have faith in me or what I was trying to say. So it's a really, I found it really hard to balance when I was actually ready with when I thought I would be ready. But luckily I have, as you say, some good people around me. My husband helped, my daughter helped, and they were kind of my cheerleaders. And I think I first thing I did, I can't remember exactly when it was, but I recorded, I think I recorded a season opener ahead of the first race of the 2023 calendar. So that would have been about 3 or 4 months after my stroke. And I had 30 seconds of radio to try and do. And it took me so long to get those 30 seconds done. I kept redoing it, but finally got to a place where I was like, okay, this will work. And it was very broken. The words weren't coming out as I wanted them to, but it was passable. So we took that, and it went out on the BBC. And at that point, I thought, okay, I can do this. So it did take a long time for me to actually get back to work. And I'm still not back as I would, I'm not back full time where I was before the stroke. But my speech has come on. It's not perfect, I know that. There's still work to do. But I was, as you say, I was very much supported by F1, by the BBC, by IMG, who run the contract. And all of those people had a stake in me going back to work. And at any point, they could have said, no, it's too much of a risk. But they didn't. And the first time I went back into the pit lane, that was a real challenge, because there's lots going on, very overstimulating.
Ah, yeah, the sensory.
So I was scared that would be me done, that I wouldn't have my career anymore. So that was a really high pressured moment. But going back into that paddock, it was like, I'm at home. Putting the headphones on, I could hear everything. It didn't matter that I was in a busy pit lane with my producer talking in my ear, with me having to communicate with other people. It all just came back to me. So I think that was one of the biggest moments of relief, thinking, okay, I'm not done here. There is a future for me. I just need to keep on improving.
Yeah. No, I love how you said that too. That it all of that work and taking your time with it and working at a fast pace for your growth, but also at a a realistic fast pace for you is beneficial. But also, like you said, that of coming back and knowing it's going to look and feel a little different, but it's still going to feel like home and familiar. And even though I might operate in it a little differently and I'm still evolving in it as you still are going through your recovery and doing that work, I think that's such a nice way for people to kind of take away from it, is knowing you can always go back and it'll look and feel different maybe as you're still growing in it, but that sense of familiar, like you said, might have even taken some of the nerves off of, oh, my speech might feel a little different this time, or I might be a little slower communicating back, but you were so kind of overwhelmed in that sense of, oh, this feels right and I'm comfortable here, and it reminded you of, I might feel different doing it, but I'm comfortable in this space too.
There was the one time where I knew that the F1 community would help me through this, was when I was trying to sleep at the racetrack, at the circuit. It was Zandvoort, and the crowd in the grandstands are epic. I mean, they're all dressed head to toe in orange because they're Dutch and that's the Dutch flag, and they love techno music. So I thought it would be a nice quiet time after a session to have a sleep. The crowd was jumping up and down to this really loud techno music.
Oh my gosh.
And I was trying to sleep in the upstairs office of McLaren in one of their managers' offices, like on my arms, like thinking, what is going on? But everyone was so kind in trying to enable me to try and get a nap at a race weekend, which, I mean, it's just, it beggars belief, but actually that's the only way I could operate, was to take naps still, because I'm suffering from fatigue. And it was slightly surreal, but we got there.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's, even bringing up that story is such a great segue into our intermission and our other half of the show too, because like you said, it's to have all of that support of everyone going, how can we adapt little things to work for you? How can we make this all still work? Is something other people, when they get nervous of, well, I want to make sure I can help you the most, kind of taking your lead on knowing what you needed, and allowing them to go, oh, I can help with that, is great for other people that are in that support network or our coworkers when they're nervous of, I don't know how to support my colleague or my friend coming back. When you bring up something like that, it's such a simple act that you would make that actually worked. I mean, in the sense it didn't actually work, so you probably weren't getting the best nap of your life, but nonetheless, McLaren was assisting and attempting to make the nap happen. So I like that. But it is a perfect segue into the second half of our show, because as you guys know, before we're getting to story time, I'm going to have Jennie tell us another story. Don't you worry. But before we do that, I always like to thank everyone for InvisiYouth Chat Sessions for listening and watching our video podcast. It is our first digital resource that we provided through InvisiYouth, and now we have 4 to 6 coming out every single month for free for teens and young adults with chronic illness and disability in 14 countries now. So it is really because of all of you supporting and donating that we are able to do so. So we do always drop our donate link on the screen, because 100% of every donation that comes into the charity goes directly towards providing and creating all of our resources, so that we can continue providing so many digital video and audio and downloadable resources for you, so they are accessible, so you can have tools for your own personal development in life with chronic illness and disability. So if you or someone you know are able to donate and help us continue providing all of this for free, it definitely helps our nonprofit. And so I thank you so much for that. And now we're going into our middle part of the show, guys. It is your favorite. It's my favorite. It's So That One Time.
So that one time.
You guys know So That One Time is when I get to sit here, drink my coffee, and let my guests tell us a life story. So Jennie, the mic and floor are yours.
Oh my goodness, the pressure. Enjoy a coffee, and I will try and entertain for those moments. I thought, because you love F1, I would go with an F1 tale of the time, the first time, in fact, that I was lucky enough to interview Sir Lewis Hamilton. He wasn't Sir back then.
Just Lewis.
Just Lewis. Call me Lou. We had arranged to do an interview, and I was like so happy because he is a sporting legend, a sporting icon that a lot of people look up to. And I don't have a favourite in the paddock, but it's a joy to sit down with these amazing people who drive and risk their lives every time they get into a car. But he has his own story, he has his own background, and I was intrigued to know more about that. And I was nervous because in F1, I think there's a lot of show, and you don't quite know how people are going to be with you. So the first interview, I was introduced to Lewis with my producer, Chezzy. And yeah, I thought we were going to be with someone who was quite reserved and didn't give you too much. But the first thing he did was say, "Oh, hi, I'm really pleased to meet you. Come upstairs, come into my office." I was like,
Nice.
Okay. I wasn't expecting him to be so gregarious and outgoing and alive, because we're the press, and the press is kind of, you don't quite know how to pitch yourself with them. So we followed him upstairs into the engineering suite for, at the time, McLaren. That's who he was racing with. And he was like an eager puppy. He was just so lovely. And I sat down with him, quite nervous and keen for the interview to go well. And you normally get 10 minutes to sit down until the press officer, who is right beside Lewis, goes, "Wrap it up." So you know that there's quite a lot of pressure to do the best thing you can in quite a limited time. So we went up there, and one of the questions I asked was, can you describe what it's like to drive a Formula One car for people who are at home, who are never going to be in a situation where they can drive an F1 car? And he was amazing with the answer. He was so articulate, and he took us inside that cockpit in our minds so we could envision exactly what he felt when he was driving. And that is quite a skill, to be able to give you that insight and offer the listeners at home that emotional connection to a sportsman. And that moment was, I suppose, if I look back at my career, it was a small victory because he was so eloquent. I managed to ask him the right things and make that room feel safe for him to be able to come out with those answers. And he might have given that answer to a million different people at other times, but I felt like and this is a skill I think he has, he makes journalists feel like he's treating them differently to anyone else. And I felt at that moment like I'd won. I'd connected with Lewis, and we had this amazing interview to play out, and it was the first interview with Lewis. So I look back at that and think that was a really special moment of someone who is mega famous now, a superstar in his own rights, changing platforms and using his platform for change. And he let me into his world just for a minute, and that was amazing.
I love that. And that's like pre-Mercedes, obviously now pre-Ferrari. But that's amazing to have that. I would love for that little like throwback interview clip to just pop up again and just see it. He'd probably be like, that is such a different look for me now, especially all those years later. But it would be so. I wonder if he would describe being in the car the same way now, all these years later, after driving it for so many years too.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know the answer to that as well. Seeing as he's grown so much since then, he's added another 6 world titles to his stash. And I think if I asked a similar question now, he probably, at this moment in time, wouldn't have that energy and that passion and that joy that he felt back then to share, because I think now it's tinged with frustration and sadness and confusion about what happened in 21 and all of those things that he's gone through, I'm not sure that he would be able to elicit the same answer now.
Yeah, that the purity of the answer would be different from all the
Exactly.
evolutions of a career, which
Yeah.
I think is interesting. But I do really like that answer, and I love a good Lewis Hamilton story. He does great philanthropic work, and I also like watching his brother drive. So from the disability side of work too. So I definitely enjoy that a lot. And guys, we're going to continue the F1. You know, we're going into our final segment with Jennie. We're both cheering. If you were watching on YouTube, we're going to Top Search.
Top Search. You got the Top Search.
So often we will always tell people, they'll say Google it when it comes to learning more about a chronic illness or disability. But you know, with Google, that means the autofill-ins and sometimes those curious answers. So we wanted to turn segment where we can talk to our special guest about getting their insights and basically allow them to be the autofill-in of our Google questions. So we're going to have a full Google Top Search segment all on F1 and get Jennie's own autofill answers. So I wanted to mention I know you've recently published your book, How to Read F1, and you've been giving more insight into the sport as well. So what do you like the most about bringing F1? I love it. If you're watching on YouTube, we're getting a visual. Yes, we are. I love it.
Self-publicity. I've learned this in my
promo.
In my new career as an author.
Yeah.
So sorry if you were listening to that, because it would have been a really dull 5 seconds, but I showed the picture of my book.
I do. I love that as well. But I wanted to know, what have you liked about bringing Formula One and bringing motorsport to people that might find it challenging to learn or feel like it's kind of an exclusive club that it's not a very communal sport. It feels like a different sport to then be watching versus other sports they might have grown up watching.
Do you know what? I love that. It's one of the things I love the most about my job. I'm so privileged to be able to walk into a paddock around the world and be able to disseminate what's happening in F1. It's such an amazing sport, and it's very easy for people who haven't been involved in it so far to think it's just people driving around in circles. I mean, yes, fundamentally, it actually is people driving around in circles. However, there's so much more to F1 than just driving around in circles. The athleticism, the union behind these 20 drivers, but it's a paddock of 4,000. Behind that, you've got all the teams working so hard on their driver, their teams. I love going into F1 and pointing things out that people wouldn't have naturally seen and letting them into my world. And it's not my world, it's F1's world and the driver's world and all the amazing personnel. But I'm there as a conduit to say, you know what, this isn't an exclusive club. It's a club that you can join, and you don't have to submerge yourself in all of the things that aren't for you. You can pick and choose. If you love the personalities, if you like the technical aspects, if you like the historical side, if you just like a good sport, all of these things and more are out there for you to subscribe to. It's just I am that middle person, and I love that.
Yeah, I like you said that too, because like even on my end, from getting into watching Formula One and Formula E, which are similar but different in very different ways. Both are motorsport, but I would watch them both for two very different reasons. Where Formula E, to watch those mechanics because of the technical side of what they're doing, is very different with a more highly electrical car versus the other side, and to see those mechanics work in a very different way than the mechanics on F1 cars is so much more fascinating to me as a viewer, kind of feeling like a fly on the wall for them. And like you said, seeing that the room change of now bringing like Formula Academy with the female drivers, and they'll pop in on weekends, and the different levels of Formula of 2 and 3 and those drivers coming in, or on my end seeing drivers with disability in NASCAR or in different levels of motorsport and what they're capable of doing, and showing that strength of the sport being for so many different people, not just what I guess people assume are the only types of people who partake in the sport. Like you said, it allows so many more people to find a different element of it besides just a team on a pitch or what they're doing, and doing it together, that there's so many moving parts to make driver and car work kind of successfully on a racetrack.
Yeah, and if you look back 10 years ago, F1 was dying. It wasn't going anywhere. What was the future of this this sport that was invested in normal combustion engines when the world seemed to going in a different way? But all of a sudden, with the interest of Drive to Survive and the new audience that have subscribed and enjoyed F1, its resurgence, its growth, its new opportunities, and the teams are really invested now in giving new audiences to F1 a platform and some to make it more accessible. So I think right now the grandstands are changing. Different people are coming to F1, a more diverse mix, and I love that.
Yeah. No, I love that. Even kind of on your end, from being a commentator, do you look at watching sports or watching F1 differently, or can you just watch it as a spectator because you do so much from the commentating side? I'm curious if you could just sit in a grandstand and watch a Grand Prix and not feel like you're like, if for anyone watching, Jennie's shaking her head. Nope.
No. I just can't.
Yeah.
I can't do it. I mean, I'm just feel like I'm so much part of the whole event. I'm so invested that I can't draw myself back from that. So the one thing about being a pit lane reporter is that you never really get to watch a race. Yeah. So I can tell you, hands on heart, and this is weird, I have never sat down in a grandstand and watched a race in its entirety. I just don't get to do that. So when I was ill, obviously I couldn't travel or anything. So I sat on the sofa, and even if I look back at my notes, I take notes every year and fill in this little notebook. And if I look back at my notes, even the first race back when I could barely walk and talk and write, I made notes. I wasn't working. I just made notes. That's what I do.
I love that. I love when you were watching, was there, this actually goes into a question I was going to watch, was there a Grand Prix that you liked watching the most? Just the structure of the racetrack, or what race to you did you like watching the most?
I didn't like watching any of them from my sofa. I can guarantee you that. I was just itching to get back. The race, I mean, Austin is a great race as an overall event because I think the city's really invested. It's not too far away from downtown, so you don't have to travel a huge amount to get to the circuit. And the circuit is made up of different parts of other circuits that have worked well through the years.
Oh, cool.
So there's a lot of very good design in Austin. So if you take the overall experience, the races are normally quite good, and the way that the track is, I think that's the one I would probably recommend to people if they were going to watch their first race, especially if they're in America. I would do that one.
I like that. I like that a lot. I have some quick F1 questions to go through, and that kind of goes off of it with it. So I know the F1 calendar has been packed more and more with races, so we don't want to add another race. But if in the utopian fake world we were picking a new city to have a Grand Prix, do you have a location in mind that you went, I could see this being a fun one?
Yes, I would go with the answer of Africa, because how do we not have a race in Africa? It's just crazy. So South Africa, to be precise. I know Kyle Army is F1 ready, but they're not gonna go for it, or they can't go for it. So they're looking at Rwanda as a possibility.
Ooh.
So let's see what happens. But I think getting a race in the continent somewhere would be amazing.
I agree. And even I'm imagining of even just city driving or even driving closer to those coastlines. And that's just so different of an environment. I think that would be really fun for people to get to experience a country in Africa as well. I do agree with that. I'm not going to ask your favorite team, but I'm asking if you joined an F1 team, what position would you want on an F1 team?
Oh my God, certainly not team principal.
Why would you say that?
It wouldn't last long. There are no female team principals at the moment, by the way. Mm-hmm. There's only been 2 in the entirety of F1. So I am not bold enough to go there. I mean, let's face it, who doesn't want to be a driver? I picked being a driver. Am I allowed to pick being a driver, or do I actually have to have a sensible
You can gladly
answer?
pick being a driver. I might be a little bit more like Valtteri Bottas has now been saying he's the 3rd driver of Mercedes. I might pick that title. Feel like I would feel more comfortable in that role. So, but I do.
I think, knowing you for the short time I have in my life, I don't think you'd be happy with a 3rd driver role.
Oh, okay.
I think you'd be bored.
Oh,
I think I like the 3rd driver role has all the perks of being a driver, apart from actually driving. That's all they want to do. All an F1 driver wants to do is drive. So they have everything else but the good side of driving. So I think for you, I don't see that fulfilling you.
Okay. Well, we can add a new team and make it 22 drivers, and you and I can be the first female F1 team then.
Let's do it. An all-female F1 team.
I like that. I like that very much.
That has to race in pink. Obviously.
There's been a team who's done it before, you know?
Exactly.
So, is there an up-and-coming driver, whether male or female, that you would suggest people who watch F1 to keep their eye on?
So I would advise for anyone who would like to have a look at Abby Pulling. Okay. She's a phenomenal racing driver. She has just won the F1 Academy, and she is destined to be probably one of Britain's greatest ever racing drivers. Whether she can get to F1, I don't know, but she's young, she's talented, she's very savvy when it comes to the world of motor racing. She's coached by the lovely Alice Powell, who is another female racing driver. And together, they're taking the world by storm. So yes, have a look out for her. Abby Pulling, she's amazing. And let's see what she can do this season.
All right, now the final question I wanted to ask, though, is what is the one thing you've appreciated differently about F1 coming back to broadcasting for it after your stroke?
Well, I love F1. I love my job. I'm very lucky. I didn't get that light bulb moment of I must change everything. I've had a stroke now. I must go out and climb Mount Everest or whatever. I didn't get that amazing light bulb moment. I just was very committed to getting back and doing what I've always done. What the stroke taught me, I think, was how to listen. I'm a much better listener now, I think. Who knows? But because I couldn't speak and communicate for that first week when I was recovering, it made me understand actually that listening is by far the greater skill if you're doing interviews. And for me, it just taught me to be very grateful for what I have, but actually the art of interviewing isn't asking the questions, it's listening to the answers.
I like that. That's a really good ending point. I love that a lot. And Jennie, I am so sad that we were at the end of the show, but I'm also so happy that I've had you on, and I want everyone to be able to find you and your book as well. So where can people connect with you on social media and find your book?
Okay, so Instagram is Jennie with an IE .Gow, and on X, who uses X anymore? I don't really know, but on X, I'm Jennie Gow. I think I've got that the right way round. If not, just move the dot. It'll be fine. And as you said, my book is now out. For those listening, it's, again, devoid of anything for you to actually engage with. But I am holding up the book, my actual book, the first copy of my book. Which is called How to Read F1. It's out now in good bookshops everywhere and online. It's annoyingly not available in the US at the moment. You have to go onto our site and buy it and then ship it out. And yeah, but we're working on that. But it's a great read for anyone who has ever been interested in F1. And for those who haven't, you can convert them.
I love that. I love it. We're going to put all of Jennie's links and a link for the book as well in our description and show notes, so you can see all that Jennie's doing, especially with the F1 season in its early stages right now because of the episode. And as always, you can find InvisiYouth on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at InvisiYouth, and our InvisiYouth Chat Sessions podcast is watchable on YouTube, and you can listen on any podcasts like Apple and Spotify. And make sure you click that subscribe button, leave a thumbs up, 5 stars, whatever you would like to do. All of that helps us and helps the podcast grow. So Jennie, again, thank you so much for being on the show. I had an absolute blast getting to chat with you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. And it's been my pleasure, honestly. And I just hope that this helps someone somewhere. And if you are struggling, we're thinking of you and we're backing you. We're on your team.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Jennie. And I will speak with all of you again soon. Bye, everybody.